owed $716 million and he couldn't make the payments, it wouldn't be right to take it away from him. Even if he couldn't make the payments, it wouldn't be right. Because he's got equity, like you have equity in your house. He has equity of $284 million. And under these circumstances, the bankruptcy court will allow him to restructure this debt. You can't pay $54 million a year. Instead of making those notes 20-year notes, we'll make them 50-year notes. We'll stretch them out. And not only that, it's interest only for the first 20 years. We'll figure out a way that you can pay it so you can keep your equity. We're not going to take away your equity, just like we're not going to take away your house. But if it's the opposite, if the property is only worth $500 million and the debt's $716, most bankruptcy courts won't let him keep it. And you can imagine, you can see why. These people are going to get, the creditors, are not going to get paid in full. They're going to take a huge discount on their claim. Under these circumstances, the bankruptcy rules don't let the shareholder keep control. If the value of the assets is more than the claims, he can keep it. Just like if it was, then what would his problem be? Problem would be debt so much, it would be cash flow. I can't pay now because the trees just aren't selling. But next year, the trees are selling, I should be able to keep my equity. But if the value of the assets are less than the claims, no matter how you operate that property, it's now worth $716 million, then he's going to lose control. How does he lose control? I'm not going to... In bankruptcy, we call this a debt for equity exchange. What happens is some of that $716 million is turned into stock. It just disappears. You don't owe $1,716 million. You owe a lot less. Or if I'm a note holder, say there's one note holder who's entitled to $716 million. All of a sudden, I'm not entitled to $716 million. That debt is canceled. It's wiped out. Instead, I'm owed $200 million or $50 or whatever the company can afford, and the remainder is turned into stock, and the current shareholder is wiped out. Now, sometimes it doesn't always happen that it's wiped out, and people talk about Horowitz all the time, and I don't know the guy, and I never had anything to do with him, and it's really not an issue of personalities, although maybe it is an issue of personalities, but it's not necessarily an issue of personalities. It's an issue of what's fair, what debt can the company carry, and how should it be managed. Very often in these cases, I think I told you before, that everybody likes a bankruptcy case where at the end of the day, everybody agrees. It's less expensive, it goes faster, it's more certain as a result. So it's not at all surprising in cases like this, even where the debt, even where you have a case where the debt exceeds the value, and these note holders, the debt is canceled, they get stock instead. It's not at all uncommon for the person in Mr. Horowitz's position to retain 5%. Why do you do that? You do that so he'll vote yes, he won't obstruct it, and you'll get it done. But that's just a footnote, because really, if the property is worth way less than the debt, he's entitled to nothing. I said that. So let me say, well, how are we doing time-wise? I'll do this one more slide on this. Let's say we made the decision, and we decided that this company can't operate with $716 million of debt. Can't operate, can't pay, can't cut down enough trees under the current, with all the tree huggers and the state and everything. We just can't do it. We can't cut down enough trees to pay $54 million of debt in interest before we pay a single worker or pay a single vendor. But we could have $200 million of debt. Say we could have $2 million of debt. That interest rate, that would be, we could pay interest on that and still operate profitably, pay our vendors, pay our employees, operate the mill, comply with every environmental regulation there was, and still send off a dividend to shareholders. Let's say we could do it with $200 million. then what would the plan of the organization look like? The plan would say, for every, and let's just say, just to make it easy, instead of 716, let's say there's $800 million of debt on the company. 800 million of debt. I know it's 716, but I can't do the math. It would say, and you want to end up with a company with $200 million of debt. Here's what it would say. For every $1,000 of debt, first of all, it would say, all that debt's canceled. Then it would say, if you are a holder, and this, remember, we had the plan, divides creditors into classes. So what happens to class 4, the note holder class? If you're a member of class 4, the note holder class, for every, your debt is canceled, so that's the bad news. But the good news is, for every $1,000 of debt, every $1,000 note you have, you will get a $250 note and X shares of stock. That's what the plan looks like. That's a debt for equity exchange. So I have debt and I'm converting it to equity. And at the end of the day, you can see that I've reduced the debt down to 25% of its former value. So at the end of the day, I got a company The company used to have $800 million of debt, and Mr. X was the shareholder. And then after the plan is confirmed and goes into effect, I got $200 million of debt because I canceled this and I issued this new debt, and I got new shareholders. And because I couldn't pay creditors in full, Mr. X goes away. These people that held this debt got the new debt, and they become the new shareholders. That's a debt for equity exchange. If this company is worth less than the amount of the debt, this is almost certainly what will happen. But it won't. But it's not certain at all, because I can tell you, I don't. Like I say, I don't know Mr. Horowitz. I've read some of his papers, and what's his position? His position is the company's worth $1 billion. His position is that we can pay we just can't pay 716 because the environmental movement and the state regulators are killing us. But if we were allowed to cut all the trees we wanted to, free of regulations and free of lawsuits and free of problems from tree huggers, we could pay our debts. And what I'm going to do, he says, is I'm going to file bankruptcy so I can stop paying, and I'm going to file a couple of lawsuits and try to make those regulations and environmentalists go away. And if I win those lawsuits, I can convince the court that it's really worth $1 billion, and they'll let me stretch out payments, they'll give me new terms. That's his position. And that's ultimately that's ultimately one of the places where this case is going to turn. I told you that creditors vote.